Welcome back, viewers, for another Trump Talk 2 in Derek's Discussions. I'm here with Josh Portnoff again, and we're here to talk about Trump policies. Now, Josh, what Trump policies do you think worked under the Trump administration?
Well, I have to think his biggest success right now that we're seeing is the Supreme Court and his three nominees. It wasn't a perfect docket this year by any means, but we got rid of affirmative action. We got religious protections for Christians. We also had a court, wasn't the Supreme Court, but a court recently ruled against the Biden administration talking to, including with social media companies. So the court in general, I think, is probably his biggest achievement.
Okay. And what else do you think worked under his administration during his presidency?
Trump had a very hands-off approach to the economy. You know, he was a businessman. He cut a lot of regulations. I think he had a policy where if you added one, you had to cut one, or maybe more than that. I forget, but he cut thousands of regulations that seemed to be meaningless. His tax policy, you know, the tax cuts that came through, I think that those really helped spur middle class growth. We had, you know, one of the highest periods of middle class income growth, I don't know, I think in the last 40 or 50 years. That was a great policy. I'm Jewish, so I'm partial to moving the Israeli capital to Jerusalem. I was very happy about that. Outside of that, you know, I personally think he handled COVID very well. You know, he did it very constitutionally, and you can argue that maybe he could have done more, could have done less, but for the people who say that Trump wanted to be a dictator, he very easily could have been a dictator over COVID. He could have taken emergency powers. We were all scared. We could have been locked down. We could have canceled elections. I mean, there are a whole host of things that Trump could have done with emergency powers that he just absolutely did not and refused to do, which I think will stand out in history as a positive, if not immediately.
Yeah, he also created a policy to help the minorities under the opportunity zones, and he gave them a chance to raise up from poverty to have successful businesses and other opportunities. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yes, opportunity zones. I love those. It wasn't only minorities though. It was if I remember correctly, opportunity zones looked at levels of poverty in an area, not necessarily levels of demographics of race. So not only did he help largely minority communities, but the opportunity zones helped a lot of rural southern and rural white areas as well. It was really designed as to try and create places where businesses would be, there would be incentives for businesses to go that because there would be less regulation, less taxes, easier development, etc. So that was a great policy. I might have just lumped that in with his tax breaks. That's probably what I was thinking of. But yeah, the opportunity zones were great.
Right. And then he had the oil barrels at a low price, dealing with other countries and nations. Gas was low, products were low, groceries were a lot more affordable, wages were closer to being able to be sustainable under people living, and rent and other type of interest rates for housing and other investments. So there was a lot of business that was helpful to lower income to the blue collar people as well, middle income.
Oh yes, the middle income did the best, and more people moved into the middle class, I think, under Trump than in any president in the last 30 years. I might be mistaken. Bill Clinton might also be very high, but God, that was almost 30 years ago. So, I mean, you know, he was very good on the economy. I don't think a lot of it, all of it was necessarily what he did. I think that, but what he provided to that economy was he understood that economics is emotional. It's not a science. It's very mental. And he was the number one cheerleader for American business and American economy and American, you know, the dollar supremacy. And he was our number one cheerleader for all of that. And all of that optimism does bleed into the overall economy. You know, it reminds me of when Jimmy Carter, in his famous Malaise speech, where he basically told Americans, you know, put on a sweater if energy bills get too high. And that might have been great advice to save on electricity and heat, but it was not good cheerleading. and it only led to the whole mood of the economy going down. And Trump never let us believe that the economy was in any sort of bad way, even if it was. During COVID, the economy was not great, but he always kept on saying it's great, it's great, it's great, and that actually helps. That's a positive thing.
Right. He actually appointed all kinds of different people and backgrounds. He appointed minorities and people who are actually LGBTQ affiliated. And a lot of people try to say he's racist or against those other communities, but he's not. He's very welcoming, and a lot of people have that misunderstanding due to the 90% left-wing media.
I mean, fun fact: before Biden, Trump was the only president that came into office who supported gay marriage. Obama famously in 2008 championed the Defense of Marriage Act. It wasn't only until 2012 that he changed his mind. Biden also did that while he was vice president. Clinton and Bush never supported gay marriage. So, that's something that the media never talks about, is that he was the first president to come in with that opinion in mind. He didn't have to change it while in office.
He also was holding the LGBTQ flag and showing support of them too as well. And if he didn't, he wouldn't be doing that.
I think someone made a very good, I forget who it was, but someone made a very good comment, and basically they said, Donald Trump for his entire adult life has basically been a celebrity. And anybody who understands Hollywood is surrounded by people of all different ethnicities and diversities and sexual preferences: gay, straight, black, white, Asian, women. It's a very diverse community, and he was at home there for 50, 60 years. So, the idea that he would be, a homophobe or a racist is just wild.
Exactly. And he's also tough on our adversaries through peace through strength type of method. And there was no new conflicts. He was the only president in over 40 years to never be into a new conflict through peace through strength policy.
Yes, Reagan used to try and claim that, but he did get us involved in a few small conflicts in the Caribbean. But yeah, peace through strength tends to work. It doesn't really make historians happy. It doesn't really make the military very happy. They like to play with their new toys, and historians like to write about them playing with their toys. So it's kind of sad that we live in a society where the people who are glorified are the people who get us into problems, not people who avoid problems altogether.
He's the best negotiator we've ever had as a president. He was able to convince Putin not to invade Ukraine. He was able to keep China in place and be tough on them through economically and militarily. And he was also keeping other countries in place that were trying to be more hostile. But now that we have a president that is soft, they're looking to poke us more than ever and possibly push through into a World War III or some major type of conflict that may drag us into it like a vacuum.
I'm not entirely sure that Trump is the best negotiating president ever. I just think that in the slate of current presidents, he had this ability, because he came from business, to understand how negotiations actually worked. People like to say that the Senate negotiates, but they really don't. They're all friends, right? A negotiation is always hostile, regardless of how nice it is, because you're trying to get concessions, and the opposite party's trying to get concessions. That's just the heart of negotiation. And I might say that some of the founding fathers were probably better negotiators. Ronald Reagan certainly was a great negotiator in terms of ending the Cold War. Trump ranks up there. But what I think Trump brought to negotiation that none of these presidents had for a very long time was understanding how to do it. It's like anybody can play poker, only certain people can play poker well.
Right. Another example of him being a good negotiator is he was able to keep Kim Jong-un in place, and he was actually able to have them meet the North and South Korean leaders, and the tensions were a lot lower than ever. And the problem now is that, as I see with Biden, tensions are revving up. So he was a good negotiator in certain ways, and with our adversaries, I'd say. But yes, I agree with Josh. There's other room for improvement. But he is learning. He's sitting back, watching, being very quiet about things, and observing and learning.
Well, I think Trump's greatest skill in this, and his greatest, not maybe not skill but asset, is that he didn't come from government. He didn't come from a policy center. You know, the problem, let's talk about North Korea as a great example. For decades, with Kim Jong-un, and his father, and his grandfather, you know, all the Kims, there was this policy of not even talking to them. Because, you know, oh, we talk to them, we're going to legitimize their government. They've been in power for almost 100 years. The government is legitimate, you know. But we wouldn't talk to them on principle. And you can't negotiate with people if you're not going to talk to them. So Trump kind of said this is bullshit. You know, there's a story about when he spoke to Obama, and Obama said, you know, you're going to go to war with North Korea, and he said, have you spoken to him? And Obama goes, no. I mean, that's policy. That's foreign policy 101 for people who have been in government for decades. Trump doesn't have that, and he came in and he said, well, why not talk to him, see what he wants,
Right.
you know? And that is his greatest strength, that he's not confined by all of these orthodoxies that a lot of people in government, you know, Republican or Democrat, have been confined by for decades.
Yeah, as a new politician, he was new to it. He wasn't following an agenda. He was able to see it from a side out of the political theater, and I think that's what worked best for him.
Exactly. You know, people, I mean, I studied international affairs in college, and I'm no expert, but what I do remember is that diplomatic relations they treat it more of an art, and it's very bureaucratic. It's very Mandarin, you know, in the old sense of the word, and business negotiations and people are completely different. And what Trump, I think, understood is that at the end of the day, Kim Jong-un, as an example, is just a person. He's a person. And if you can appeal to him as a person, maybe you'll get somewhere, as opposed to seeing him as a monolithic idea, as the leader of Korea. You know, like if you could just say hi and shake his hand, you know, it's like when people try and say that he was soft on Russia because he was friendly to Putin. I mean, of course you're going to be friendly with somebody in a room that you're negotiating with. You're trying to get things from them. You don't go into a negotiation and start yelling at somebody. Only people who posture do that. If you really want to get things done, you grease some wheels, you shake some hands, you compliment them in public, right? And then they're more likely to maybe say, you know what, like, you know, we can give up on this one small area. You know, Trump said something nice about me.
Right. Everybody thought he was going to be a warmonger, but they were proven wrong through his presidency. No new conflicts, unlike all the other living presidents. Because they see war as profit and backdoor deals and all this stuff. You can do your research on it, and the proof is in the pudding, basically.
I agree. Foreign policy-wise, I think he will go down as one of the most successful foreign policy presidents, especially since he's only had 4 years. What he accomplished in 4 years was just amazing foreign policy-wise. I mean, he defused North Korea, essentially. I mean, before Trump came in, we were all worried about World War III with North Korea. Kim Jong-un is still there. That's not great, but, you know, he's not launching missiles over Japan anymore. You know, he had the Russia-Ukraine situation relatively under control. China was playing ball with us, we were trying to get some concessions out of China. And I think, you know, his Middle East, you know, David Accords were astronomical. I mean, they basically opened the way for Israel to be welcomed as a member of the Middle East community. History is going to be much kinder to Trump than we are right now, because history is going to take away all of the nonsense that the media generated about him, and they're going to look at him from a much clearer perspective.
Yeah, he brought peace to the Middle East, and all the other presidents were against sending wars in the Middle East. So you can see the huge difference of the oppositions of his side and their side, and that's why I voted for him, because I really had faith that he'd be a businessman at heart, and he'd treat the country and fixing the economy and bring more peace in the world and having people have new alliances of prosperity and working together collectively.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think of his chances in 2024?
I think he has much higher chances in 2020. And now he can start fresh. He can have a better VP. And a lot of people are supporting him now because they're seeing the outcome of the Biden administration and what's going on in the White House.
Yeah, I think that his shots, I always say this, regardless of what you want to say about election meddling, Trump entered that race with the hardest position a president has ever entered in since maybe Hoover in the Great Depression. We were in the middle of a global pandemic. The economy was in a really horrible place because of that pandemic. You had all types of anger and fear, and people were locked up, and the fact that Trump came within 200,000 votes of winning, again, regardless of whatever else happened, he was 200,000 votes from winning. That's a strong performance, and he picked up, I think, 11 million more votes or something like that. He picked up millions and millions and millions of more votes. So I think that if that's your base, if 73 million votes is your base, I can't imagine it being any lower in 2024.
Exactly. And he'll pick the right VP. He'll pick someone who will actually have backbone like him and do more. And a lot of people are going to try to approach him about it, because they know he's going to be the GOP primary lead as a candidate.
Well, they're having the first debate soon. It's the VP debate, right? I don't even know if Trump is going, but it's going to be Haley and DeSantis and maybe 5 or 6 other people. I don't know if Trump is going to attend that debate or not. But if he doesn't attend the debate, it's not a presidential debate, it's a vice presidential debate.
Right.
It's basically like, let's see who's Trump's going to pick.
Right. He can just watch and observe from wherever he is.
Exactly.
He doesn't need to be there. It's for their time to shine and see which would be a good ticket as a VP.
And it's also so far away. I mean, we're talking about it already, but the first primary election isn't until March. We're really talking about 8-9 months away. Anything that really happens now is fake news is not the word, but it's just kind of like it. We won't remember anything of the summer of 2023 when it comes to the election of 2024. Everything that's going to happen in the election of 2024 will basically start in March of 2024. Everything that's happening now is just kind of infotainment. It's the reason to keep the news on the TV.
Yeah. Now, what policies has Biden been able to accomplish? What would you say about that?
Barring that I don't think we should be in Ukraine, I actually think he's doing a decent job at getting NATO to keep Ukraine around. And again, when I say Biden, I don't mean Biden, I mean whomever is in control, with Biden as just Biden, eating his ice cream. But, the Biden administration, I hate the fact that we're here, but we are here. And it's kind of the least worst outcome given that we're here. I think, maybe that's it. I have to think about that. It's they did do the CHIP Act.
I agree with you with the Manufacturing Chips Act under Biden, but Trump would have done it himself. It's a business tactic, and he wants to win people on the other side and try to be more center with that kind of strategy. But yeah, that's it for today. Tune in for another Trump Talk, and thank you for listening. And subscribe, like, share, and comment on the video. Thanks again, Josh. Highly appreciate it.
Thank you, Derek. Have a great weekend.